y'all may have seen me running around the office on several floors. My name is Ted. I lead the Gravitas team on the 5th floor. I do wear a lot of different hats. So I act as Kip, our CEO's executive assistant, chief of staff. I run his family office. I also, like I mentioned earlier, run all of Gravitas. So within Gravitas, there's several layers. There's Gravitas Realty, which I'll be talking about today, which is kind of a single family spinoff of RREAF, which obviously just focuses on multifamily and hospitality. We also have Gravitas Charters, which owns and operates a yacht out of the Caribbean. We also have Gravitas Aviation. Kip owns 4 aircrafts, 2 or 3 of which get dry leased or chartered out to some of the executives here and other people around Dallas. A lot of my role is managing Kip's personal assets like a business. That includes the planes and the boats and vacation homes. But what I'm talking about today is Gravitas Realty, which is really fun. And so that's the part of the business that's focused on income versus just managing and operating and marketing personal assets. With that being said, I'll cover a little bit of background about our company, a little bit of background on me, how we evaluate properties, what goes into consideration when we run the numbers, some aspects of the design strategy, a little bit about the construction process, marketing and selling our homes. I joined Gravitas, I started working for Kip in December of 2020. I had lived in California for about 11 years prior, working in the entertainment industry in LA, and then also at a tech startup in San Francisco. Decided to come move back to Texas during the pandemic or after the pandemic. Kip basically was like, hey Ted, like you like design and home stuff. I was like, yeah, I watch HGTV, I can try my hand at it. He was like, well, my daughter is expecting our first grandchild in Virginia. It was like middle of nowhere, Virginia in Appalachia. In the middle of winter. He had bought this little bungalow sight unseen, and he was like, just go out there and find a contractor and here's your budget, and we need it to be done in 3 months because that's when our granddaughters do. And I was like, okay, shoot, well, I'll go to this part of the country I've never been to. I don't know anyone there. I've never renovated a home before. I learned a lot. It was a 3-month process. I took this little shabby bungalow house and we transformed it into something that was, you know, very nice and livable that they still enjoy, so they have a place to stay whenever they're with their grandchildren out there. Just an example, like here's the kitchen on the left that looks like a scene out of a country western 1970s horror movie. And then on the right, that just looks like a nice little catalog. And I also included like a hand-drawn thing that I had done like literally in my Holiday Inn room that night after I'd walked it. And I was like, okay, well, here's the layout. How do I want to move walls around? What do I want to accomplish? If they want bigger kitchen, they want it to be open concept, and they want a big master bath with a big soaker tub. And so when I got back to Dallas, Kip was like, well, you know, this was pretty successful. Would you ever, you know, if I was the investor and you went around and looked at different properties and were able to analyze them and find out what's a good investment, would you ever want to do this on the side? And I was like, I will absolutely try. What goes into evaluating a home? So like when we go and we tour these homes, what are we looking for? Our biggest thing is, you know, you hear it over and over again, like location, location, location. We think about the purchase price, we think about what the cost is, we think about the neighborhood and the appreciation in that area. We think about the comparables. What do the other homes in that area look like if in this same square footage and this same bedroom count? Like what are they selling for when they're fully renovated? School districts, future developments. A really thoughtful renovation can overcome the wrong property. One thing you're always going to be thinking about when you're doing a home renovation from an investor standpoint is how are you minimizing risk and maximizing value? Obviously, you want to invest in like kitchens and bathrooms. And in terms of minimizing risks, a lot of that is on the buying side. You don't want to buy on a busy street. You don't want to buy on a bad foundation. You don't want to buy in, you know, an area where there's bad schools. Like there's things that you can get ahead of and be proactive about. When I'm buying this property, what am I doing to set myself up for success? All those things will help you create value and then maximize your return on your investment. We use this system through MLS that helps us pull comps. And so through those market comps, it helps us show if we pull in the numbers, like if anywhere from a 4 to a 5 bedroom, 4 to 5 plus baths, and this square footage range in this same neighborhood, we can literally draw a circle on a map and go around and see what's selling and what doesn't. So here's one that we did for a home over in Bluffview about 1.5 years ago. What we found was a lot of these are selling close to their list price. For example, this house was listed at 1.3, sold for 1.4, so that's like 107% of list price, which is great. The other thing to consider is the days on the market. This guy right here, this first one, he's been on the market for almost a year, so that's not very good. But he did end up selling, but only at 88% of the value. What we'll do is we'll go into that one, look through pictures, floor plans, see what they did, see what went well, see what didn't go so well. When you run the numbers, you can create common threads on like, is this a good neighborhood to invest in? And so that's kind of our biggest starting point. So when we run the numbers, this is an example of dumbed down version of just in Excel. And this was one of our homes we did on Drain, which was in Greenway Parks. If we purchased it for 1.6, we have all these formulas that we've done based on our time to renovate, how long we want it to sit on the market, or how long we think it could sit on the market. Obviously, you want to be more conservative with these numbers. How long the total project is going to take, any sort of overhead and profit margins. For construction, you want to leave contingency costs. You want to include commissions. Traditionally, there's a 6% commission on both the buyer and seller side, with split evenly, 3% for each. If you've borrowed money for the renovation and you've taken a loan, what that interest rate looks like. What is it going to cost you as the investor to really hold on to this home for those 8 months? Taking this consideration, your closing costs at purchase, your property taxes, insurance, carrying homeowner's insurance on the property, the interest on your loan, the utilities, if you have to keep up any sort of utilities or maintenance throughout the construction, loan fees, and then you get into the side of like the actual construction budget. So for this one, we wanted to plug in, call it $190,000. That was just our general construction budget based on what we wanted to do. So we wanted to gut the kitchen, gut a bathroom, move a wall around. We had to do some foundation work, whole new landscaping, $190K. The commission for the construction for our GC, and then any sort of contingency that you want baked into that. All in all, what that does is, 1.6 quickly balloons to over $2 million investment. So say you have that, and then when it comes to list it, say we want to list it at 2.25, and we base that number on comps that we've seen in the area, that leads us to a gross profit of $250K. So, if you're doing the math and you're like, oh, well, I bought it for 1.6 and I'm going to sell it for 2.25, I'm going to make a ton of money. It doesn't always work that way. That money just dwindles very quickly. Of course, after closing, you think about commissions, you think about any sort of legal fees, closing costs, title fees. So you end up with a net profit. So much of the money that is made on these flip properties is really made on the buy. And what I mean is that you buy it low. Look for properties that are have been sitting in the market for 6+ months. Obviously understand why they've been sitting in the market, but you can find a distressed seller and really make a lot of your money up front by getting a good buy and buying at a good rate. Design, the fun part. There are a lot of decisions when it comes to design, especially with doing a investment property. As much as I would love to put swanky everything and colorful everything into a home, you're gonna end up losing money and you're gonna end up isolating buyers. So a lot of the design strategy is about casting the widest net possible to the audience. Obviously you wanna tailor it to that demographic and that buyer pool. So a lot of design decisions do end up coming back into your ROI. But I wanted to give y'all a taste of like things that we do when it comes to design. Is there's just a lot of options with whites and grays. There's thousands of different paint colors and they have tons of finishes. So like you want to put flat on a ceiling versus eggshell on a wall versus like a semi-gloss or satin on the trim. And you have to put together what we call schedules to provide to your builder and kind of give them a guidebook for everything. And a lot of this will help timing. You have to make all your decisions like very quickly. That's not to say that you should make them hastily. Give them some thought and do your research on what's trending or what's popular and what's going to get the widest audience. You can't go back and forth and spend weeks and weeks and weeks figuring out what shade of white to paint something. That's going to screw your schedule up, which is going to end up affecting your carrying costs. This is just a sneak of one of the paint schedules that we've worked on, where it's broken down by just the floor, the room, the location, the brand of the paint, the color, and then the saturation of the colors, what kind of finish you want, whether that's satin, flat, eggshell. And then I like to do a little color preview just so like the actual trade that's working on that part of the house knows what it should look like visually. This would be an example of a paint schedule. These are some fixture schedules along with stone. And then we also put together like mood board just to make sure it all will look good and cohesive together. The other big thing is like where you're gonna invest. I mean, I mentioned this earlier, but kitchens and bathrooms tend to sell homes, but you're not gonna over-invest in a certain area, under-invest in another. You have to spend money to make money. If you're in a $2 million house, you would not want to put in like a quartz or a porcelain countertop in a kitchen. They're going to want real stone. They're going to expect quartzite or marble. It's important to do your research on materials and finishes. Marble in a kitchen is beautiful, but it's not often practical because it can be a little porous. Quartz is man-made and it's meant to look and act like a marble or a quartzite. And then similarly, this is a porcelain tile. If you go to Home Depot and you see big tiles of porcelain, it's like, oh, it kind of looks like marble. But then you look at it closely and it looks like someone printed off a piece of paper with a marble print on it and just slapped it. I noticed it in the hospitality industry. Like if you're walking around or using like a restroom in like one of the big fancy restaurants around here, you'll see on the walls where the tile veining repeats because it's man-made. And so they literally will like print it onto a big porcelain slab and just slice it up. Versus a quartzite, which is natural. So that movement in there is one of a kind and it was made by the earth. Another example, this is real marble. This is a Carrara marble that's cut into a hexagon pattern. And I think when it comes to materials, there's a lot of different options. You're just gonna wanna invest wisely. Like in a kitchen, you maybe wanna splurge on a nice fancy slab, but in a guest bath, just do white quartz. But another trick that we've learned is remnants. So you can go to remnant yards around Dallas, and a lot of them will literally sell you a broken slab of marble or quartzite that's the real deal that happens to be the size you need for $150. And so that's been a nice kind of scrappy way that we've been able to get a really cool look with the real deal. Sometimes people will overbuy them, and we can literally go on Facebook Marketplace. Oh, I just bought 5 boxes of this fancy Evolution tile, which retails for $20 a square foot, and I got it the whole box for $100. You can't really do that stuff at scale, but we're just a smaller boutique firm at this point. We have the flexibility to do those kinds of things. So I talked a lot about renovations and like the kind of home flipping. We have also done a ground up single family build over in Bluffview that sold early last year. So you can see the process that's involved, just from sticks to stone to one of the many shades of gray that we get to choose for a decking stain. And then little things like, how high do you hang these pendants? From a design perspective, there are things that are going to create balance. There's like sorts of ratios in math that you do with design. Construction. So much of this has to do with planning ahead and understanding your schedule and your budget and sticking to it, which is much easier said than done because there's always things that can arise that are unexpected. But one of the things that has helped me in my career is just being as proactive as possible. And so when I say that, I mean, not necessarily preparing for the worst, but just coming to expect certain things. If I know the GC, the general contractor, is going to ask me for a schedule, I already want to have that like pre-made in the back of my head. One thing to think about with construction is if you want to contract it yourself versus have a GC, a general contractor. So we have an in-house GC at Gravitas under Gravitas Construction. We do pay him a fee that ends up just like rolling up to his salary. But if you are someone that thinks they can manage different trades or subcontractors, as you call them, by all means do it. It's tough. A lot of times it's worth the money to hire a GC, even though it is like cost plus 20. So what I mean by that is whatever material, say this material is $100 a foot, the GC is going to charge you $120 a foot because it comes with labor and everything that's involved in actually getting the material. And he sets up all the subcontractors or trades to make sure it gets installed properly. But if you think you can manage plumbers, electricians, sheetrockers, painters, trim carpenters, cabinet makers, and the schedule of them, there is a very specific cadence that you have to hit when you put together a construction timeline. They're pouring the foundation here, so you got to get your contractors and engineers on site this day, and then I'm going to have all my lumber ordered for framing, and that's going to start this day, and you're going to expect it to run these 2 weeks. But in the middle of that, maybe you can fit in your plumbers to make sure your plumbers can start the rough ends, and then at the end of that, you can kind of wire in your electricians. No pun intended. But it really is a science of how to schedule things out. And then budget. Another kind of just general career thing is setting expectations and clear communication. My expectation is that this home is going to take 4 months to build and it's going to cost this much. What is your expectation? Okay, well, our expectations aren't aligned right off the bat. Okay, well, then how do we bring them together? You do that with clear communication. And I always say put everything in writing. I will always follow up. If I told my GC that I want something in a brass finish or I want my cabinetry at this thing after an on-site meeting, I will send an email with bullet points in writing of every single thing that we talked about to make sure that it is, with a permanent marker, this is what we decided on. That will help eliminate mistakes, even though mistakes are going to happen, and keep y'all on track. I did a little example of one of our projects construction budgets. And again, I'm just screenshotting these, so this is not even showing the full detail of them, but there's so many different buckets that you think about when it goes into a construction budget. Kind of the boring, ugly stuff, as I call it, like, lumber, electrical, plumbing, but then also the pretty stuff, the appliances, the fixtures, the wallpaper, the paint, the stone, the tile. What we like to do is however much we need, the unit cost, any tax, what we actually budgeted for it versus what we spent on it versus how much we went over or under. And then you can see at the end, the delta. We ended up going $70,000 over, and you can see where we went over on excavation. So a lot of the dirt work, we didn't quite estimate that right. Flooring allowances, looks like we probably upgraded to white oak, so that was an overage. In other areas, we'll see a negative. So we definitely saved money on the lumber. So the total delta is $70,000 over, but we had a baked in contingency, 10%. So really, we didn't really go over budget, maybe just a little bit. There's like all these little details, and you can update them in real time in the spreadsheet and kind of see where you're tracking. Marketing and selling. We talked about timing earlier. Timing is huge. The late spring and summer months are probably the biggest time of year when people look to buy a home, and oftentimes it has to do with schools, and especially if families are moving and school districts change. The winter months, I think people are just busy with the holidays. When you think about marketing and when you're gonna sell the house, timing is just a really big factor. Staging and photography. Oftentimes when you look at homes online, they will be professionally staged. It can be worth the money. I think that we have done both ways. I have found that staging a home does sell the home faster. I think the longest we've had a home sit on the market was 2 months, so 60+ days. And one of the biggest switches that we did was the staging. We swapped out the staging and it sold a week later, which is kind of wild. One thing that's worked for us is you can hire a stager and for a month it'll maybe be $5,000 or so, or we can just stage in-house. So we have a good chunk of furniture that we've collected just via Facebook Marketplace or big online sales, and we hire some movers and we go in and we'll stage it ourselves. For photography, we have Carlos, who's been really awesome with helping us get professional photos of our homes, which is super important. Putting them on MLS. MLS will then blast it out to all the platforms that y'all are used to seeing, so like Realtor.com, Zillow. Scheduling open houses and scheduling broker previews. A lot of times you'll want to do an agent or a broker preview before the actual house hits the market to kind of create a sense of FOMO to these brokers in the area or agents in the area. They can kind of get a sneak peek and then go back and tell their clients, hey, this house is in the market. If you want to go see it now, it's the time, because it's going to open up to the masses and you might lose out. Social media, everyone knows that that's a huge thing. So this is our Gravitas Instagram page right here. And then also website. If y'all want to go to our website, you can see all the work that we've done throughout Dallas. I have loved doing this. I think that it helps fuel both sides of my brain, the creative side and the analytical side, and like the one that wants to execute on things and get stuff done and lead a team to do it. And then also like allows me some of the creative freedoms to make things look pretty and revitalize things. And also just knowing that like someone's gonna go and live their life in that space is really cool.